The Drone Racing League is back, and with the introduction of the Racer 3 drone, which will be the standard craft all pilots and the DRL 2017 will fly. Unsurprisingly, it's more powerful and agile than its predecessor and could be the shot in the arm the sport needs to go mainstream. The Racer 3 should make races, which air on ESPN starting June 20th, even more thrilling, luring more fans to the game. Most hobby pilots will tell you that half the fun is building your own quadricopter and improving it over time. In DRL races, though, there's one standardized drone, and it's all about piloting skill. Innovations include doubling the thrust to 16 pounds in the Racer 3, which makes it much more agile than its predecessor, allowing for tighter turns and more demanding three-dimensional race courses. There are also more practical elements like a polycarbonate canopy that makes the Racer 3 more rugged. Sometimes one bad crash is all it takes to end a pilot's race. With the new polycarbonate hood, the Racer 3 can take more hits, and pilots can actually get right back up and keep on racing in the same way a MotoGP rider might hop back on his bike after a fall. The DRL's 2016 season was picked up by ESPN, or Sky in the UK, broadcasting the season's races to an audience of nearly 30 million people. The only problem with those budding pilots that ESPN has lured in? Well, you won't even be able to buy the Racer 3. It's for DRL pilots only. It's simply not for sale. However, the DRL has partnered with Toy State to make a more mainstream quadricopter, which should be hitting shelves coming up in August. It's not quite mainstream yet, but it's getting there. Last year, the outright DRL winner, a pilot named Jet, bagged a six-figure contract. This year, even armchair pilots can snag 75 grand by winning a digital race in the DRL's PC-based drone simulator game. The money's starting to come in, though. The DRL has a sponsorship with Allianz, and rival league DR1 has Mountain Dew. But the job title Pro Drone Racer is a very elite club right now. The Drone Racing League's 2017 season kicks off on ESPN at 8 p.m. on June 20th. The prison service and police are to pool intelligence to stop drones from flying drugs and mobile phones to prison inmates in England and Wales. They will forensically examine captured drones and try to find out who was flying them. The invention of easy-to-fly remote-controlled aircraft has caused a huge security headache for prisons recently, but critics have called the plan a red herring to distract people from the chaos and crisis in prisons. The national initiative will see police and prison officers sharing information about the quadricopters and methods used. The prison's minister said, "We are absolutely determined to tackle the illegal flow of drugs and mobile phones into our prisons and turn them into places of safety and reform. My message to those who involve themselves in this type of criminal activity is clear. We will find you and put you behind bars." Prison walls are not much of a barrier for those wanting to smuggle contraband into jails these days. There have been some recent successes in finding and punishing those who are behind the drone flights, says the Ministry of Justice anyway. In December, a 21-year-old was jailed for 4 years and 8 months after he used a drone in attempts to smuggle drugs and mobile phones into Manchester prisons. A 23-year-old was sentenced to 3 years and 4 months back in October after he was caught outside a Warrington prison with a drone in his bag trying to smuggle drugs inside. And back in July, a 37-year-old was jailed for 14 months for trying to supply contraband to offenders in 4 different prisons. I can already see the future, an army of drones patrolling the skies above prisons looking for other drones. Also in this week's medical news, an electric skull cap designed to zap cancer cells trying to grow in the brains of wearers proved useful at improving patient survival in a 5-year clinical trial. When combined with standard chemotherapy, the cap more than doubled 5-year survival rates of brain cancer patients from 5% to 13%. The trial involves 695 patients newly diagnosed with an aggressive form of brain cancer. The modest survival improvement is exciting for such a nasty form of cancer, in fact, the deadliest primary malignancy of the central nervous system for adults, that according to Dr. Roger Stupp, professor of neurological surgery at Northwestern. But it comes at a steep price. Around $700 a day, the AP reports. Most U.S. insurers are covering the caps, which have already gained FDA approval. The company behind the trial and the device Novocure is covering those on Medicare. The cap, called the Optune, works by sending alternating intermittent frequency electrical fields around 200 kilohertz into the brains of cancer patients. The idea is that the electrical fields disrupt cell division, preventing cells from properly lining up with their chromosomes during a cellular split. This disruption, the company says, is fatal to cells. But because cancer cells make up the majority of the cells dividing in the brains of adult cancer patients, the treatment is more harmful to tumors than the brain. In the 5-year phase 3 clinical trial from July 2009 to November 2014, 466 cancer patients were randomly assigned to try out the Optune. At 5 years, survival rates jumped from 5 to 13%. Novocure is working on treating other forms of cancer with the electrical fields, including advanced pancreatic cancer, and could become a standard treatment in just a few short years. Hydrogen fuel cell company Plug Power recently announced that Amazon would be changing its battery-operated forklifts to hydrogen fuel cell-powered ones at 11 of its fulfillment centers. According to Reuters, Amazon secured the right to buy up to 23% of the company as well, which would make the online retailer one of the largest shareholders in the fuel cell company. Plug Power said in a press release that Amazon would be spending about $70 million in 2017 to purchase Plug Power's GenKey systems, which include fuel cells for forklifts, stationary fuel cells for backup power, hydrogen fueling infrastructure, and, well, the fuel as well as customer support. Hydrogen fuel cells are seen as an interesting alternative to batteries because batteries can take a long time to recharge, whereas fuel cells are simply refilled like filling up the gas tank in a car. There's also no real waste or emissions associated with using hydrogen to power a vehicle, besides harmless H2O. But there are downsides too. Making hydrogen often relies on burning greenhouse gases. So critics say it's not truly a carbon-neutral fuel. And transporting hydrogen is more difficult than transporting, say, gasoline, as it often needs to be compressed or kept at very cold temperatures. Still, fuel cell technology is being developed by GM in partnership with the Army and the Navy, as well as Toyota and Shell. In its press release, Plug Power noted that its partnership with Amazon will be unique, as the fuel cell company will collaborate with the retail giant on exploring the expansion of applications for Plug Power's line of ProGen fuel cell engines, which could include applications in cars and trucks in the future.